Carmen?
There's no one here.
Carmen? Is that you?
So we are talking about the low-budget British indie horror flick, The Forgotten. This one is directed by Oliver Frampton, who also co-wrote this, and really stars a cast of unknowns. But I'll come on to the acting again in just a moment. So this one was released on the festival circuit in 2014, but has just been released on the DVD here in the UK in 2016. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the cover art. As you can see here, a spooky young girl in a kind of corridor, looks very reminiscent of things like Grave Encounters. Forget that, that's not in the movie. So as typical of these kind of like DVDs that you'll see in supermarkets and stuff like that, the cover art is somewhat misleading, but don't let that put you off, because this is a good horror film, or supernatural drama really, more than anything else. So the story here, basically, we have a desperate father and his 14-year-old young son basically are kind of like holding up in this like dilapidated old kind of block of flats, and it's pretty much run down. I think they're squatting, and the young son, after a short time, is basically hearing strange noises from the kind of the flat that is just next door to him, basically scratching on the walls and stuff like that. And you know, he's kind of wondering what's going on. In the meantime, he kind of makes friends with this kind of local girl, and basically together they kind of try and unravel what's happening, basically. And obviously there is a supernatural twist, as you can probably somewhat imagine. So like I said, this is more of a supernatural mystery and kind of drama, with this kind of like a sprinkling of horror elements. Now, if you are used to kind of the style of British dramas, then that's going to be more along the lines of this kind of film. It's a slow-moving film with not a lot of kind of, there's not really no action sequences or anything like that really. There's no real kind of gore, there's no real special effects to speak of, but it is still a quite chilling and gritty thriller, I would say. I think here it's a case of being particularly well directed in regards to sort of building up the tension, and really kind of making fantastic use of lighting and darkness as well, and the kind of like the juxtaposition between the two of them to create some kind of very chilling scenes, basically, without the kind of the use of actual visual effects. So my hat is off really to the filmmakers here for making quite a credible kind of supernatural thriller with the kind of the minimalist of kind of effects and kind of supernatural stuff that we see on screen here. I talked about the acting here. And I think for the most part, the acting for this movie is spot on. Special, basically, note to Clem Tibber, who plays the young kind of 14-year-old Tommy, who is our central character. And I thought he's a fantastic actor here. He makes for a very kind of sympathetic lead, basically. He's a very kind of shy lad who, is somewhat put upon. He's had a hard life, but you really do sort of sympathise with him, and you kind of want him to kind of succeed throughout the film, basically. But pretty much all of the kind of the main characters here, I would say, are very well acted. Tommy's father, played by Shaw Dinwell, and I'm going to mispronounce this name. His kind of female friend that he meets as well, Elakari. Oh Jesus, here we go. Elerikina Johnson. I well butchered that one, but basically the female lead. She's also very good. There are a couple of kind of very small parts that I feel are somewhat poorly acted. There's a group of bullies, for example, that I feel the acting there is a little bit weak, but they're only really in one scene, so it's not that kind of bad. So the acting, I'd say, is pretty good. The other only real main criticism I have of this film is the ending of this film. I feel is weak. Unfortunately, it's basically leaves you without kind of really a satisfactory conclusion, I feel. And throughout the film, basically, we're kind of giving clues about what's kind of happening, and we're kind of, if you're pick up on it stuff. If you watch the movie, you should be able to pick up the gist of what's happening. I felt this film really could have done with a flashback sequence, basically, to kind of give you some context in regards to what's happened previously here. They do kind of tell you in some exposition, but I feel in the film medium it's a case of show not tell, and you know, it's kind of just a few little lines of dialogue sprinkled out throughout the movie. I don't feel it's quite enough to really kind of get the message across about the past, about what's happened here. But also at the end of the film, I feel needed a little bit more work as well. I felt the last maybe 10 minutes doesn't quite make sense, and it wasn't clear what was going on and ultimately what kind of happened. I feel for a lot of viewers will kind of they're kind of be left scratching their heads a little bit. I don't know if that was a deliberate choice, but I think it being the end of the film, it will kind of leave a somewhat of a kind of bit of a shame, really, bit of a kind of not a bad feeling about the movie, because it's a good film, but it will kind of leave a little bit of a disappointment, I feel, because otherwise, other than that, it was such a strong movie throughout. I thought, as I said, the performances were good. If you are a millennial and you're kind of one, this very much this kind of this bombastic style where there's something happening on screen every 5 minutes, then this isn't going to be the film for you. If you are used to British television and British dramas and stuff like that, where you have this kind of slow burn and this kind of growing sense of dread, then you'll like this film. It looks like a kind of a ghost story from EastEnders in a lot of ways, basically. But I thought it was just good. It was just a shame. I thought the end really kind of did let it down, and obviously a couple of minor niggles. The only other thing I would say as well, and this is a real nitpicky thing, but there are a couple of sequences where child protection services would have been called on certain things. Certain working professionals would have acted in a different way. It's all I will say, in fear of spoilers, but hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. Overall, though, I felt this was a strong film. You know, good performances, well directed, certainly in a visual style. I felt maybe the script could have done some work. I always feel with sometimes when people are making somewhat obscure plot points in films, because they are so over familiar with the plot themselves, they kind of think, it totally makes sense because they're involved in the film. But when you're watching it completely cold, you kind of thinking, I'm not quite seeing connecting all the dots here. But overall, it's well worth your time if you like a kind of creepy ghost story. Just don't be expecting a fast-paced one. Don't be expecting lots of special effects. But if you like a good slow burn, then check it out. 7 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.